Moving on to Daniel Penny today, found not guilty of negligent homicide, finally closing a case that should never have been opened in the first place. Of course, the race hustlers are outraged. In a news conference after the verdict, Jordan Neely's father and BLM co-founder in New York, Hawk Newsom, lashed out at the system.
Stop begging this system to justify our lives. Stop begging this system for justice. When things happen to you, you step up and defend yourself. Just like everybody else seeks justice on their own, just like everybody else has vigilantes, we need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
Others are praising Daniel Penny as an American hero, like our next guest, professional capital management founder and CEO Anthony Pompliano. It's good to see you, Anthony. It strikes me you're not just praising Daniel Penny, but you're saying I can relate to him. I have served like he served. I live in New York City. I know what happens on the subway. This is really about just recognizing the reality of life in a place like New York City and what makes it livable.
Yeah. I mean, look, I put out this tweet that went, viral, and everyone was saying, hey, why did you say something? And it's because the private conversation, this is what every single one of my friends was talking about, and no one wanted to say it in public. And the conclusion was Daniel Penny is an American hero, right? If my wife and children were on that subway car, I pray that somebody like Daniel Penny would have intervened. Right. And so when you see a city, if you do not have a justice system that understands that if he does not act in that situation, it likely goes a different direction, that women and children are in danger, then you basically have a city that is overrun by criminals. And that's not the city that people want to live in. And so going back to a system of law and order is obviously very important. But on top of that, I think that understanding the intent of an individual like this, and we saw evidence after evidence after evidence in the case, I think that it's just saying, look, this is a Marine who deployed overseas, who's trained to address a threat when it's a credible threat. He deemed that. So did the people on the subway car. They were thanking him afterwards. And so I think that you have to ask yourself, what is the society that we want to live in? Daniel Penny acting in that situation, a lot of people are saying, I'm glad that he did it.
People of color on that subway car. Black individuals, Latino individuals. And for these people to stand up after this not guilty verdict was handed down, by the way, on the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide, after the judge was lucky that they rendered this decision, because this would have come back to haunt him, that he kicked out the first charge after they were deadlocked on Friday, because that didn't fly with a lot of legal analysts. But for these individuals to essentially call for attacking white people when Daniel Penny was standing up for everybody in that subway car, regardless of their race.
Right. Yeah, look, I think a lot of people want to kind of bring race into it. Maybe that plays into it, maybe it doesn't. But I do think that I'm not a legal scholar. What I do know, though, is that the American justice system allows people to go into a court and argue the facts, and a jury made a decision. And I think that part of this is, does the jury always get it right? No. But in this case, if you look at Daniel Penny, you say, hey, he's an American hero for stepping up in a situation, putting himself in danger to address a threat to protect women and children. You also have to say, well, there are heroes that were on that jury who saw this for what it was, and they said, I am not going to sit here and go along with this and convict a man who I don't believe should be convicted. And I think that we always look at the individuals that are in the situation, but it's also the people on the jury.
Go up a level for me. It seems like we're in a moment where America is craving a clear distinction between heroes and villains. And we have, for whatever reason, been getting that wrong for several years now. As much as I hate to see anybody have to go through this, it feels like this Daniel Penny case is a case where we can sort of realign again. get back to real justice again. Do you read that like a broader thing going on here?
I think it's just a massive vibe shift that has occurred in society, right? You know, when I put out this tweet, I had people reaching out to me that I hadn't talked to in years, people who I respect, people who I'd never even talked to before. And what I realized was everyone is thinking this stuff, but everyone was scared to say it in public. And then once somebody stands up and says it, everyone else kind of says, oh, you know what? That's okay to say. And so if you look, this is a small scale. Look across society. You have Mark Andreessen talking about Operation Choke Point 2.0. You have Elon Musk going on Joe Rogan's podcast, right? You have all these different things that have happened that have shifted that Overton window. Yeah. And now all of a sudden people are realizing, wait a second. Were we like living in some fantasy world for the last 5 or 6 years? Instead, let's get back to common sense. Let's focus on what people really care about, which is they want to live in a good, strong economy. They want to feel safe. And they want to feel like the future is brighter than the past. Yeah. And if we can get back to that, I think a lot of people will be much happier.
Can I just bring up, and I'm glad you brought up Mark Andreessen, because I had that very conversation with someone over the weekend, that it's so important that these voices that people on the left listen to, that they are now speaking out and giving truth to what other people on the right, conservatives, have actually experienced and been called lunatics for trying to speak out about it.
Here's what's fascinating to me is a lot of these people in tech were Democrats. Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen, they've donated hundreds of millions of dollars collectively to these causes for a long time. And so if you ask yourself, like, what is happening? People have access to information. They're starting to think independently and critically. And they're saying, I don't actually care so much about what are the different political parties. I want to just follow common sense. And if the Republicans are going to be more of a working class party, if they're going to go and look for security and economic strength, et cetera, well, that just aligns with my values. And so I don't care what you call me. I just want certain policies implemented. And I think that's why you see this massive shift. And so hopefully this is a wake-up call also to those who maybe had gone a different direction and say, hey, look, those policies are not what the American people want. And instead, let's course correct back and let's get to more unity in the country.
Right. Decent people finding a spine again and talking about it and realizing America's maybe not as off track as we thought. Thank goodness for that.
The one thing I was going to add, and I won't digress, is that this is also a discussion of mental illness and the dangerously mentally ill, and how are you going to treat them? Because locking them up like this, that's the only way that they've been treated, is being locked in prison or being locked in a jail. Yeah. And we have no state psychiatric hospital beds anymore.
You've been talking about that for years,
but this is the root of the root of the problem, and people not acknowledging schizophrenia and dangerous bipolar disorder in young men.
We've also seen the number of kind of mental health patients significantly drop at the same time that imprisonment has exploded. And so you basically just traded. So, hey, rather than send people with mental issues into a mental health institute where they can get the help they need, we put them in prison. And if you go talk to the police, they say, look, we arrest people 7, 8, 10, 15, 20 times, and they get back out on the street.
Anthony Pompliano, thank you so much.
Great stuff. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.